Very pleased to be joined by a professional wrestler. She is the women's champion for Can-Am Wrestling, among a number of other titles. She is Kat Von Heez. Kat, thank you for doing this today. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for doing this. So I guess we can start at the beginning. Well, what drove you to get into this wonderful world of professional wrestling?
I watched it a lot when I was a kid. I mean, for a stint, I was with my babysitter actually, and he was really big into wrestling. So I watched it when I was really young, and then I went through hiatus for a bit because my parents weren't really into sports, and I don't think we had the channels at the time. But then I got back into it when I was kind of in my early teens, and just went hog wild. I went to the rental stores, like the Blockbusters, and just rented as many DVDs as I could find, and just lived in my room. And I always wanted to be one, but then kind of just this, when you watch that whole Attitude Era, I was very my body was obviously at that age, you're kind of well, I can't look like a diva. I can't look like a women's wrestler. And so I was always self-conscious, but I always wanted to do it. And I went into high school, and there was a wrestling team, and they were the first team to really give me an opportunity to try a sport. And I was naturally pretty decent at it, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I saw that my dream could become a reality, and started talking to a lot of local guys back in the MySpace days, and right, aging myself a little bit here. But yeah, just started talking to local guys and started going to the shows. But I mean, it all started with I don't know, just I got obsessed with China when I was really young, and I just saw her, and I was like, she's amazing. She's different. She's just broke so many ceilings for women to look different. And so I saw that as my opportunity to be a different female at the time when everybody was looking, more like a model or just a really, really beautiful woman. And I said that I was always pretty, but I just didn't feel like my body fit the mold, and I always wanted to be something different.
Okay. For the record, that is a Blockbuster reference and a MySpace reference in the first answer. So we are on fire with 90s references so far.
Right.
But yeah, I always find that interesting when you hear about well, yeah, watch the Attitude Era. And for a white dude like me, it probably hit a little bit differently than for someone like yourself, when the treatment of women wasn't progressive, I think would be the nice way of putting it. But then to tie it back in with China, it really does kind of remind you how different she was, and how, I guess, impactful she was as a performer.
Yeah, it kind of just I, as a girl who, obviously women go through all those phases of feeling really insecure, and there's the social, the media and everything portrays what women should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just nice to see someone that didn't fit that. And being someone that comes from more of a strength background, my grandparents had an acreage, so I always did a lot more physical labor as a young girl that some of my friends definitely didn't have to do. And so I just never felt like I fit the mold of this really small athletic girl. And I mean, I was a bowler for 15 years, so my athletic career didn't start off at a really strong note there. So it was a big transition, obviously, to go from bowling to something physical, but China made me feel man, I could be like her. And so it really something to hold on to. And then once I lost a lot of weight doing amateur wrestling in high school, it kind of just felt like the goal was attainable.
Yeah. Look, let's not hate on bowling here. My legs are sore for 3 days after bowling, but that might say more about me than it does about the bowling. But you talked about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I say bowling doesn't get enough credit. I mean, it's not the most challenging sport in the world to do, but until you're in it competitively, you don't realize that you do 21 games in 3 days for tournaments sometimes. And it's more intense once you're actually doing national levels or provincial levels. And you would never think bowling gets to that level, but it does.
Yeah.
And the parents are nuts.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's a tough sport in some ways, but it's definitely not the same as professional wrestling.
Yeah, a little different there.
A little different.
You talked before about how on the amateur side there was kind of something that was like, oh yeah, I could do this. I'm always fascinated with this with professional wrestling, because there is obviously that there's a lot to learn and a lot of growth that needs to happen, but then something for a lot of performers, it just kind of like clicks. Was there that kind of like light bulb moment for you, like, oh dang, like I'm good at this, I can do this a lot now? What was there kind of that moment for you?
I don't think I can like pinpoint a specific moment. But I think just I really wanted to do it so bad that, like, you know, no one like starts out like they're just great. Like it's very rare that you find someone that just has like this natural talent and just knows what to do, and like they're not only great physically, but they're great with like connecting with people and stuff like that. And they go through we go like an identity crisis, like who are we in there, and what kind of persona do we want to play? But I think it just like over time became like there was a moment where like, okay, people are contacting me, like people are actually like, you know, like promoters are trying to book me in separate occasions, and like I didn't contact them. There was just moments where like you started feeling more adequate and people were starting to notice what you were doing. And I just knew that at the time too, it was different. Like I'm not a flyer, I'm more of a strength wrestler. And at the time there's so few women. So it was just when I had these moves that were different. I think I went to a show in the States, and one of the guys came up to me and just said like, listen, I've never seen anyone do like half the moves you're doing, especially from a female. So it was just really a moment for me where I was like, oh, okay, like maybe I've got something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now coming up, like you said, like there aren't a whole lot of women who are doing this on the I guess independent scene or whatever you want to call it. But a lot of times you'll see a card and it's like, oh, and this is the women's match on the show. Well, when you have those, and a lot of times everyone's kind of at the same experience level, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is it because with the guys, there's a bunch of vets they can go talk to and stuff like that? Is that the same for women's wrestlers as well, or because it's a little bit limited, are you just like getting any morsel of information you can from anyone?
That's essentially it. I mean, like I didn't have a lot of women to like go to. I mean, there was women I looked up to once I started getting into the independent scene. Like I think I didn't get to wrestle her till recently, which was like Lufisto and stuff. She like broke a lot of ceilings for women in indie wrestling, and she's just an incredible talent. But like locally, like I was the only girl in Winnipeg for like, well, I don't think there has been another girl coming out of Winnipeg recently. And then me and Bambi Hall kind of broke in around the same time. So we kind of grew up together. Like we were like married to each other and then separated for like 7 years, you know. But I really went under most of the, like my mentors were men. So like Vance Nevada was one of my mentors, and still talk to him to this day. And I still get his advice, and he's still like doing his thing in the indie scene. And like, he's done a lot for a lot of up and coming wrestlers just to kind of guide you on the right path, like what not to do, what to do. And he always saw potential in people, and he kind of gave you that boost of confidence you needed to kind of stay on track. But now there's more women. So, I mean, I guess being in the business 10 years, I've kind of become a vet. But there's a lot more women to talk to now. So there's a lot more people, and like with social media and like all those platforms, it's easier to reach out to people. And I feel like more people are receptive to kind of helping out up and coming talent too. So like, I think that's been a good shift too. Cause I mean, when I started, social media was like, so like you might have had Facebook and MySpace, like I said, and that was really, you didn't have Instagram and Snapchat and like Twitter and all these platforms to reach out and communicate with, you know, the people that you wanted to emulate the most. So yeah, women's different. Even like we went to the CACs a few years ago, and Trish Stratus won an award, and you know, there's always a lot of guy names there for people to go talk to, which I mean, I take advantage of as well. But, you know, when Trish was there, like the women didn't get a lot of time to talk to, like, you know what I mean? Like the one time that the girl there that we could actually talk to, We don't usually, there's just too many questions to ask. So a lot of times you don't get that time with someone of that caliber, of someone that with that status to like pick their brain and stuff. So it doesn't happen for the women as easily or as much as it could or should.
Right. With that in mind, as you mentioned, 10 years in the business now, that would put you in vet territory for sure. Is it important for you with some of the younger wrestlers, and there are a few of them with Can-Am, a lot of nights when you're in there, you're the more experienced of the two. Is it important for you to kind of be that vet now to the younger performers?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that like, I mean, the business is not always kind and it's not always friendly, and women have a harder time sometimes navigating certain avenues. And you know, if I can help them along the way and help, you know, them not go through some of the struggles that some of the other women I know and myself have gone through, it's important to me that they don't have to go through those struggles. I mean, you can't always prevent it, but you can help, you know, be the person that they talk to, ask questions to. And then kind of when I just see that they need some help, like it's harder now with my schedule, but I like to get in the ring with them, or, you know, at least try to like leave my stamp on them somehow, and hopefully they feel comfortable enough if they have questions or concerns, talking to me and getting some advice from me. But I'd like to help out as much as I can. It's wrestling's also about giving back to the next generation so that wrestling can continue to evolve. And I'm thankful for all the women that did that for me.
Right. Well, and also if they get better, that gives you better opponents to work with as well. Like it's kind of a circle of life kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, the last couple of years for every industry has been a little bit challenging. But with professional wrestling, when so much, and we saw with the big TV companies, how much the crowd can actually affect things, it looks like we're kind of on the other side of this thing now, and we're starting to get a few more people into buildings and things like that. But how, from a performer standpoint, where you want to go out there, you are still learning, you want to grow, and the only way to do that is in a ring in front of people, and both of those opportunities were limited. How frustrating was that? And now how exciting is it that maybe we're at the end of this thing hindering that sort of a thing?
Well, yeah, it definitely was so different. I mean, like, when they first shut things down, obviously we couldn't really do anything. There was the odd show that would pop up, but like with the restrictions, there was maybe like 50 people allowed in the building, or 100. But then again, if 100 doesn't show up, it's just everyone was spaced out. So like there was no, like the atmosphere was so different. So you found yourself not getting the same type of adrenaline, not the same kind of reactions. So you don't really know how to gauge like if what you're doing is like what they want to see. Like, are you getting the same reactions for a new move that you wanted to try? And then you couldn't really interact with fans, right? So that's half the experience, being able to like meet with them and like, you know, slap their hands on the way in, and like it just really changed the atmosphere for wrestling. And then there was no wrestling for a long time. So a lot of people, I mean, you can't just like, you can go to the gym and you can try to stay in shape, but ring shape is and ring cardio is different than running on a treadmill. So a lot of us came back with a lot of ring rust on us, and like,
Right.
you know, trying to navigate that. But even then, like I've been wrestling since June consistently last year. And when the restrictions were still in place, and it was different. I mean, it really didn't feel the same. And you could tell people were uncomfortable being out in public, and it kind of just changed the atmosphere. But it was just sucks that for people that are up and coming, they couldn't travel, they couldn't go to the US without fear of getting stuck there and basically not having any money.
Right.
And so it's been unfortunate for anyone, I feel like, breaking in the last 2 years or trying to hitting their stride. It must have been difficult. And for me, it's like, I'd like to travel to the States and to other countries, but it's just with real life and working and stuff like that, it's really hard to justify leaving for like 2 weeks and then getting stuck there when you have to come back and either have other obligations or work to deal with. So it just was a risk to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that would be, I can't imagine how frustrating that would be. And you talk about like ring rust and going to the gym. Sometimes you couldn't even go to the gym. So it's like, you're going to like practice a headlock on your couch or something like that. Like everything was just so limited.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I was like fortunate. I was able to like stockpile like fitness equipment in my house, but it's not the same. Like,
Right.
and like you just do your best, like you do your squats, you do your push-ups, you do stuff. But like, especially in Canada too, like we have like long winters, right? So you can't just go run outside or whatever. And if you don't have a treadmill or a bike or something like that to do cardio in, like you can watch some, wrestling tapes and try to stay fresh and come up with some new like moves that you'd like to try, but ultimately you can't try them until you encounter somebody that you can do them within a safe space. So
Right.
It's kind of put like a pause button on wrestling in some ways, but it also gave people time to like recoup and rest up and maybe come back fresh and analyze what they'd like to do with their character, maybe come back and restart. There's some positives with it, but it definitely was something I never thought I'd have to deal with both in my career and my lifetime. So I'm sure that's how a lot of people feel about it.
Totally. Checking out your social media, it seems like weightlifting and powerlifting is kind of a passion of yours. A, am I correct in that? And B, where did that come from?
Yeah, like I love it. I sadly, like with years and years like of wear and tear on my body, it's not as easy for me to like do it on a competitive level. But no, I mean, I was, like I said, back in the day, like I was naturally just strong. Like the farm, then not so much farm work, but doing work with my dad, like, helping him build like a garage or reshingle a house and like carrying up packs of shingles. And like, as a kid, I was just like, to me, that was normal. Like it was just normal work.
Right.
And I think I can't remember. I think I was like grade 5 and we were setting up something for an event and they had those big banquet tables and everybody, like the teacher's like, oh yeah, 2 kids, 3 kids to a table. And I just like went in, I picked up the table by myself and like just like brought it up to my face, like shimmied around and was carrying this thing by myself. And like, no, don't do that. And I was like, my dad works for like a school division. So on my days off in my division, I would go to work with him. So I would help him set up events all the time. So lifting those tables were like nothing to me. So when I got into high school, unfortunately, like, there's not a lot of sports emphasis on strength in high school. Like they don't really encourage it. They don't talk about it. So I always felt like, there was potential for me to do something, but like I wasn't a volleyball player, wasn't a basketball player. And so when I finally was able to convince my parents to let me go to the school gym and go to the Y, I gravitated towards the weight room. I'm scared of it. But then I just saw these guys that were willing to kind of take me under their wing and be like, let me show you around. And yeah, like I was doing like heavy weights at 17. Like I got up to like, I think an 800-pound leg press at 17 for reps. Wow. And my calf raises, which was like my pride and joy. I don't know why the heck I was so proud of it, but I did like 1100 on a standing calf raise.
Holy cow.
Because I just saw all these guys do. I was like, I can do that. And like, I just pushed myself. So I think once I started getting out into like wrestling, I started going to different gyms. I was like, oh, like powerlifting, like this is something I could try. And I was just naturally better at it. And I just fell in love with it because I felt at home. I finally felt like accepted for like what I was. Like I mean, if you throw me on a sports team, I'm not going to be like the worst one on the team, but I'm not like a star soccer player, or I never felt like I fit in with what the rest of my kids and the kids in my class were doing. So when I picked up the weights and I was celebrated for my strength, that felt like I found a part of me that was missing. So, and then like, as I got older, I got into the strongman community out here in Edmonton, and I love it. Like the people are it's like one big happy family. I mean, happy and dysfunctional at times, but no, it was like, everybody was so supportive. Everybody, like your biggest competitor is like your biggest cheerleader too, because they want to beat you at your best. But I mean, so many people would see me struggling with a new event and be like, oh, I want to help you with that. And they would stop working out and come over and help you learn something new. And it was just like a different community, but it felt so good. And I encourage women that feel like they couldn't find their niche, or like are naturally strong, or like are worried about being like, I don't know, burly and judged for being too strong. I was like, just rock it. Like we're not all built the same. We're not all, meant to do the same thing. And like, if this is what makes you happy and this is what makes you different, then I guarantee you, once you get in there with the right people that are going to celebrate who you are, like, you're going to feel so much better about what your body is, what your mentality is on, like, going to the gym. Because a lot of people just don't go because they feel so out of place. But the strength community gives people a really positive, like, community to go into and feel like they could go there all the time and have friends and not feel judged for being different.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
With professional wrestling and with like training for powerlifting and stuff like that, this may surprise you. I know nothing about either. So for this, are there like contradictions where one works here, but the other one really doesn't work here? Are there like similarities where, oh, I can take this from this world and put it into this world? How do the two, I guess, kind of commingle?
It's definitely tough. It's there's a gray area, because obviously the strength and learning to be more stable with your strength and your muscles, like for me, it's like I'm essentially a very good base for wrestling because of it. Like, I mean, I can catch you, I can hold you, I can base, and chances are you can pile stuff on me and I'm not just gonna, like, my muscles have really good stability. But I mean, with heavy lifting, like if you're going to go into a competitive aspect of powerlifting where you're doing like, I mean, for me, like a 400-pound deadlift and stuff like that, it's not a fast movement. It's a completely different set of muscles that you're kind of utilizing. So it tends to slow you down a bit because it doesn't have any speed to it. So I found that, like, when I was really focusing on competing in strongman, like, it was really hard for me to keep up on speed. So I find that's the biggest struggle. I mean, the person I'd say would know the best would be like Jordan Grace is a perfect example of commingling the two. But there's a lot of injuries that can happen in powerlifting where, one wrong step and you've hurt your back. And with wrestling, like, your back is crucial. Like, if you start having back injuries, like that's your spinal column. Like, if you can't support it, or if you've got lower back injuries, I mean, it just takes one slip and you've got a slip disc and you've got nerves that are there that can cause paralysis. So you have to really be careful with, like, is the risk worth it? And so I found, like, I loved it and it was good for a long time, but I definitely had to kind of pick one to focus on. Otherwise it was like I was either not doing great in both and I was doing okay, or I was, like, seeing more injuries happen than I would have had if I just stuck to wrestling or if I just stuck to powerlifting. So,
right.
Yeah.
A couple more here for you, and thank you so much for your time today. Obviously a tough time in the wrestling industry. Scott Hall passing away this week. As someone who rented the movies at Blockbuster and grew up during that time, obviously he was a very important figure in that. For someone who was in the wrestling industry, I guess maybe just a couple of thoughts on how important he was to a boom period for this industry and the industry you work in as a whole.
I mean, I think, like, I mean, it depends on, I don't know how everybody feels about it, but, like, I get attached to people, like, even, like, people that I watched and stuff. So, like, when people like that pass away, like, this is a brother and sisterhood. So whether you knew them personally or not, or in, a lot of people's cases, you, like, watched him growing up, you feel kind of connected to that person. It just, I don't know, like, for me, it's emotional to lose somebody. Like, I mean, we all end up losing, like, or the fans end up seeing people pass away over years, but it's never easy. Like, everybody in the business, especially during that time, had a lot to do with evolving the business in some way. And so for a lot of people and myself, like, Scott Hall was just like that really cool bad guy. He made you want to be a bad guy, and he was just, I mean, when I met him, I was like starstruck. I try not to be when people come in the locker room and, they're at that level. I think when I first started, I was like, oh my God, I get so enamored. Now I try to keep that like internal so that I act like a professional.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's just one of those guys that has a presence that you can't help but just be in awe of him the whole time. And, he was super kind and such a like a guy that he was a guy that truly wanted to give back to the business. Like he wanted to help people like evolve the business. So he was always looking towards the future, always looking at like how he could help new talent so that they could help evolve the business for people in the future. But I don't know, it like those kinds of deaths like just hit hard. I mean,
Right.
I'd be lying if I didn't say I cried a little bit when I found out. And I know a couple of people were closer with him that he played a big role in kind of mentoring them through their career. And I mean, you lose that, like you lose the advice, you lose the knowledge if you don't ask those questions, if you don't get the chance to meet them, or the interviews that should happen don't happen. So it's always a sad day for wrestling when you lose someone of that caliber and of that knowledge base.
Yeah.
Too soon, you know, and so tragically, just so quick, like you don't get a chance, you don't see it coming. So
yeah, just very, very sad, and just like out of nowhere for someone who it seemed had turned things around too.
I mean, and it was kind of hit home a little harder because my husband, Bobby Sharp, just had a hip replacement.
Oh, wow.
In July. So when you hear of a complication like that, it's like it could happen to, you know, someone like my husband could have had that happen. It was just like, you don't think of like my husband went in for the surgery that's pretty routine that a lot of people go through. So you're not thinking someone is, especially like, I mean, I know Scott had, you know, years of struggles and stuff that, you know, a lot of people definitely learned from him too, like that it's possible to kind of move away from that stuff and reform yourself. But again, like he went in for a routine surgery and comes out with this situation. And like, that could have been my husband. That could have been a lot of wrestlers that go in for a surgery that just, you're thinking everything's going to be fine. And then the body just kind of backfires on you.
Yeah. You mentioned your husband there, Bobby Sharp. You guys have wrestled against each other before. That had to be just like cool as hell to be able to do that. And B, do you talk about it on the way? Like, is there okay, we need to separate work and life and all of this stuff? Or is it like, are you guys cleaning dishes and like, you know, if we would have done this, the match would have been a little bit better. And you know, like how, is there kind of that separation, or is it just all engulfing?
I mean, there is separation. Like we do try to like turn off some of it, but anyone that knows my husband knows that like wrestling is life. Like there is nothing else
Right.
for hobbies and passion. So I don't think he ever fully turns it off. And I mean I kind of like linger on things when it comes to like matches that don't go the way I want them to go, or a move that I tried that didn't like get the reaction I wanted. So like we definitely do talk about it, but I don't think we like stuck on it for days.
Okay.
But he always like wanted this to go somewhere. And so like the angles were always like, I don't know, they were really fun. I mean, not very many wives get to like hit their husband or put them through tables and not get the cops called on them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And vice versa. So it definitely helps with therapy. Like you don't have to go for couples therapy. Any sort of problems you have at home, if you don't intentionally mean to, they come into the ring with you. So, you know, things are you come back and there's like nothing to fight about because just all the aggression's been left out there. But it definitely was a different dynamic. And I think the big one for us was the hair versus hair match in Saskatoon. My parents were there and my grandmother was there. And they got involved. Like my dad ripped the clippers from his hand, and my grandma, like bless her, like I didn't tell her to do anything. I just, because I didn't expect, she's so conservative that I just didn't think she'd get involved. But like he took her chair away from her, and then she just started beating him with her purse, and it was just like I didn't see it until after the show. Like I watched the footage back, and it was just, it added so much to that match to have them involved. But grandma was just perfect. And I'm blessed to have a family that just is okay being involved in those kinds of things. But yeah, it was cool. We basically, I think, feuded for almost 2 years between Saskatchewan and Alberta. And it's a different dynamic for sure. And we would talk about it at home a little bit, but you kind of can't bring wrestling home like too much, because then like you don't have time for anything else. And it kind of, if something goes wrong and you're not happy, it brings kind of that, like, what's the word I'm looking for, that dissatisfaction and stuff, and kind of like that bad attitude at home. So yeah, it was a good time, but it's good that like for me, like have moved on from that. Like I'd like to maybe revisit it one day, like, but I think we did a lot of stuff and that we needed to do, and we've hit a lot of different we did a lot of different gimmicks. I mean, heck, you dressed up in drag. I mean,
yeah,
and not a lot of guys are willing to dress up in drag to fight their wives. So
no, I would imagine that grouping is pretty small for sure.
He was a beautiful woman, though. I'll give him credit. Like, I mean, none of us were like connoisseurs with drag makeup, but I mean, Lola looked pretty good.
Nice. If people want to find you on social media, I'm assuming the MySpace page is shut down, but aside from that, anything else that or anywhere else that people can find your work?
Right now I have Instagram and Facebook. It's just at Kat Von Heez. I try to keep it simple. And like there's pages on YouTube and stuff, like with channels that my matches are more or less predominantly on. But I'm not a Snapchatter. You know what I mean? I feel so old, but I'm not tech savvy. I wish I was more tech savvy, but I stick to the basics, and that way I can focus more on giving more people my undivided attention.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Kat, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, look forward to seeing you around Calgary soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.